Hello, welcome. I'm going to try to go through some dogfighting examples so we can resolve some discussion on Board Game Geek. So first things first, want to talk about the rules the way I understand them, and then we can just clarify and make sure we all have it correct. So first thing with this is that obviously you have Bandit Tokens like this, and the Bandit Tokens, of course, are easy to identify because they have the year marker on them, and so I have two Bandit Tokens in this example. I also have two bombers. These are what we keep referring to as bombers in the rulebook and on Board Game Geek, and they're easy to denote because they have no year modifier and they have brackets. First rule with bombers is they are high altitude, or at least the altitude's listed on the token, and so since this is a high altitude, you have to be at high altitude in order to be able to attack that bomber. The bandits, however, are considered to be at both altitudes, so it doesn't matter whether you're high altitude or low, you can attack a bandit. So that's rule number one. Rule number two, the bombers for you are also pretty straightforward, but if you happen to have the large keyword on your plane, you're considered a bomber no matter what. You're always a bomber for purposes of dogfighting. So this B-25 is always a bomber. Now the Corsair here can be an escort or a bomber, and the way you determine that is, are you carrying any munitions that have weight points on it? That's the blue number here. So if I'm carrying these Tiny Tim rockets, then this Corsair is considered a bomber for the purposes of dogfighting. If I have no weight points on it, it is considered an escort or a fighter. That should hopefully get that out of the way. So now with that being said, the first thing that we had issue with was right here. It says that engagement occurs during the move aircraft and move bandit step. Okay, so the engagement move aircraft and move bandit step is here at step 16 and 17, and there's this attack phase that occurs before then. So I admit I'm the one that got caught up and confused on that. We determined, based on our discussion, that dogfighting always happens if you are in the same space as an enemy, period. This little blurb here about the move and the move step is you could move into an area with another. Here, I'll show an example. So we could have a situation where there's a bandit here and I'm moving into the area with the bandit, and then what I can do is engage it. That's what that's referring to. If I am in the same space as a bandit, then I am considered to be in a dogfight with that bandit. There are some engagement rules, you just follow them. The bandit, if it's your turn, you get to select, so let's say I have two fighters there, and don't pay attention to the names on I just grabbed anything out of the box. So if I happen to have two fighters or escorts, and it's my turn, and let's say they're both fast, I get to choose which of these two is going to engage that bandit. And then what they would do is they would go into what's called a neutral position, and the neutral position you can see is two fighters facing each other. Okay, so that's what would happen in that situation. Now, if this is considered a bomber, and it's the bandit's turn to go, the bandit will always engage the bomber. It will not engage your escorts. That's if it's the bandit's turn and he has not engaged anybody. As long as I have an escort engaged with him, he can't disengage from me and switch to the bomber. Okay, so that's the first understanding that I have. Okay, moving on. Let's say it's my turn to attack. I have to do dogfight maneuvers with this particular pilot, and the other thing that the rule says is only one. It's impossible to have two on one side or the other. It's only one on each side for a dogfight. This situation is not allowed. So these two would be free roaming, if you will. This would, you would resolve a dogfight between these two. Okay. The dogfight, when you resolve it, is going to lead to you either being in a neutral position, advantaged, or tailing. Those are the only three situations where you get to attack. If you're disadvantaged, or he's tailing you, you can't attack. So that particular fighter there, Lewis, can only attack if he's in a neutral position, which is this. If he's, I'm moving the wrong one. If he's advantaged, which is that situation, or if he's tailing, which is that one. If he somehow ends up in this situation, he cannot attack, and in that situation, he cannot attack. Okay? So let's say we resolve the attack and this bandit survives. This other escort also gets to attack, and we know that from page 27. This came up on Board Game Geek. Unengaged escorts and bandits each get to perform an attack, and they do not roll for maneuvering because they're not in a dogfight. And what they do is they attack from a neutral position. So what that means is you just treat this one as if he's engaged like that. So you do the exact same thing you would in a dogfight, except you skip the maneuvering step and you just resolve the attack as if you were in that position. Okay? So how does it resolve? So let's say I'm Lewis here and I'm engaged with that bandit. What you do is you pick your maneuver you want to do, and let's say I'm going to try to do a half loop because I want to position myself to get better advantage on him. So what I would do is I would roll a d10, and I got a 3. So this is my maneuver success chart. So I have a 3, and I'm going to add my air to air. So I'm Mr. Corbali here, who has a +3 to his air to air. So that 3 I rolled becomes a 6. Well, the fighter I'm up against has a +1 on him, so that reduces me to a 5. So I rolled a 5 overall. So then I look at the chart, I try to do a half loop. I actually lose a position on him, and so it moves to this. It was a -1 position. So basically I maneuvered myself so poorly that he now has an advantage on me. So I don't even get to roll an attack. Okay? So that's what happens in that situation. Let's say I would have rolled something a little bit higher and got a +2 positioning. So then what happens is I can do this for +1 and this for +2. So now I'm trailing him. So then what I would do is I would roll for my attack. So I roll a 3 again. I get to add my 3. Remember, 3 from the card. That's 6. And then I subtract his air to air, which is a 1. So that would become 5. But then I get to add 3 more because I'm tailing him, which gets me to 8. That 8 matches my gun's number, and as soon as I can hit that number right there, that 8, I win. I would have destroyed this bandit. So let's play it out and say that I missed, maneuvered poorly like that. Well, this guy, remember I have a second escort in the area. This one gets to attack. So what I'm going to do is attack them, and I get to do it as if I was neutral, which just basically means I get a +0 on my attack roll. So I'm going to go ahead and roll. I rolled a 6. I get to add, let's say he also had +3. Sorry, I don't have all the cards out. So 6 + 3 is 9. I subtract the 1 there, I would have gotten an 8. And sure enough, this fighter who was not dogfighting actually destroyed that bandit. Okay, that's the scenario that I have. That's scenario 1. Okay, scenario 2 is if I'm a bomber. So if I'm a bomber, see those brackets under air to air? So if I'm a bomber, basically what happens is the bandit gets to attack me, and I don't get to fire back until I'm either at a disadvantage, which is that situation, or trailing, which is that situation. And how do I know that? I know that because the gunner attack section, if you have brackets, you get to perform attacks on enemy aircraft that are advantaged or tailing, as if they were at a neutral position. So if they're advantaged or tailing, I get to still roll an attack. I would use the air-to-air modifier, which of course is poor. I would need to get an 8 in my roll, and that's also factoring in that I have to subtract because of his air-to-air ability. So it's really difficult to do, but my bomber could take him out. And that's only in the situation where I'm in a dogfight with a bandit and I'm a bomber. Okay, situation 3, and I'm realizing this should have been situation 2, is what if that bandit got to attack me? How do we resolve that? So what we do is we go over here and we see that the bandit is at an advantage. So you use this column right here. He has an advantage on me. Because remember, I rolled poorly and lost position. So then what I do is I would roll and get a 7. So I'm doing the enemy maneuver choice. So 7 plus the enemy's 1, which is right there, right? So it's an 8. So I go to where it says 8. He's going to try to do a half loop. Okay, so then we have to roll again to see if he succeeds. So he's going to do a half loop. He rolled an 8 again. He gets to add 1 for his, which is a 9, and subtracts 3 because we have a 3 air-to-air, which is a 6. He got a 6, so he's actually going to get +2 position. So this bandit is going to tear us apart. So that situation occurs. Now we have to roll on the attack resolution. So once again I roll a 3. I get to add +1 for his air-to-air, so that becomes a 4. But then I subtract 3 for our air-to-air, which moves it down to a 1. So he only rolled a 1 for his actual attack. But I forgot something. He gets to add 3 because he's tailing us. So that becomes a 4. Okay, so this 3 gets 1 for his air-to-air, becomes a 4. It gets 3 more for the tailing, becomes a 7. And then -3 because of our air-to-air, which drops it down to 4. So then you just look at him, and you see a 4. And so what happens is we pass the first number, but not the second. So we would get 1 stress on this pilot. That would be the outcome of the bandit attacking us. Had we passed the 6, then, oh gosh, I gotta look it up. But it's written right here. We become damaged. And the one thing I wish is you also get +2 stress. I wish they would have put that there. You're damaged and you get +2 stress. And then if we would have passed the third number, you're destroyed. Okay? So that is what happens when a bandit attacks you. The only difference between you being an escort or a bomber is just the bomber gets to shoot back when you're in a position like that. And of course your bombers are going to have very poor air-to-air values. And so when he's trying to maneuver on you, you're not going to be able to reduce his numbers very well. Okay? So that's a dogfighting example with a bandit. And I also covered the example of if it's 2 versus 1, one of them will engage and do an actual dogfight maneuver. The other one just gets to take a pot shot at a neutral position. Now, what if it was this situation where you have 2 bandits and only one of you? It's the exact same thing. You're going to have one of them engage, and then this one takes a pot shot on you as if he was neutral. Okay. So then the bomber situation, the only thing special about the bomber is just that he's high altitude. So if you see here, this one's low altitude, they cannot engage. So they just pass each other like ships in a night. If I was high altitude, I can then engage this bomber, and it's no different. They would start off neutral. I would do a maneuver, but whenever I do my maneuver check, see how the bomber has this little -1? Okay, the bomber, that actually adds 1 to my roll. So it's actually to my benefit. So it just shows how much easier it is to maneuver against the bomber. The last rule I wanted to cover, we were confused because it says bombers have air-to-air maneuvering modifiers just like bandits. And as you saw, it was a positive modifier for us. What some of us on Board Game Geek, me, myself included, we thought it meant that the bombers actually do maneuvering. So let's say it's the bomber's turn, and we're in this situation right here. When it's the bomber's turn, the bomber does not maneuver. And that's the same for us as well. If this is considered a bomber, we don't get to maneuver against a bandit. Bombers do not maneuver. And remember, the bombers are anything per the rules I explained at the start of the video. So their bombers or your bombers, there's no maneuvering. And all you do is you get to do a gunfire. So this 4, 8, 10 there, he would do a gunner attack, and the gunner attack always assumes neutral. So basically it's a +0 bonus. And you would just follow the little chart right there in the brackets. Okay, last thing with bombers is bombers disengage at the end of every turn. So if we are engaged with a bomber and we have an advantage on that bomber, and let's say we miss, and that bomber misses us, of course. So let's get rid of these. This bomber would then disengage with us. So now we move to the next turn. If I want to attack that bomber again, I can, but then I'm re-engaging from a neutral position. I do not get to stay in that position. Had this been a bandit and the turn ended like this, we would stay engaged in a dogfight. Okay, so with that said, the bombers disengage, and that creates some interesting opportunities. So let's say I have a fighter here, a fighter and a bomber, and then I have 2 bandits. So what's going to happen on a turn is my escort is going to get to pick which bandit I want to engage. So let's say I'm going to pick this bandit. I engage that one. Okay. Then what's going to happen is this bandit's going to engage with our bomber. So we're going to have 2 dogfights to resolve. Let's assume that I killed the fighter with my escort. So then what happens is at the end of the turn, my bomber is going to disengage. So then we go to the next turn, and in the next turn, since they're disengaged, I can then use my free escort to engage the bandit, and then my bomber can keep flying to the target. So that hopefully addresses the bomber question some folks raised, and a big thank you to, I can't remember your name on Board Game Geek, but big thank you to you, because he spoke with Kevin Verson and was able to get some answers that cleared a lot of this up. So that's my video. I'm at 18 minutes. I'm going to stop, get this uploaded, give me feedback, tell me if you feel I got anything wrong, but I think that is how dogfighting works in this game, and how disengagement and other things of that nature. Thanks for watching.